Okay, uh, today I'm going to talk about a little project of mine, um, which is I'm calling it a new way of programming. It's a programming framework that addresses certain problems in programming, and specifically, let's hang on, we're waiting for Prezi to load. But the problems that it's wow, it's taken a long time to load. But in any case, I'll tell you about it. The problems with programming, writing software that does something specific is very easy. In fact, a lot of times you can just use ChatGPT to write the code for you. But the problems with programming are that here we go. Uh, there's the user interface. So you have to create a user interface. In other words, just writing the functionality is not enough. You have to create some way for the user to use your program. And you have to consider multi-threading if you're going to write an efficient program that's going to make use of all the different cores that are on a modern CPU. And you have to consider distributed processing. And this is important, especially important for enterprise applications where you can't run a large international bank on one PC. You have to be able to distribute the computational effort over multiple CPUs that will be in multiple locations. And also, in a enterprise situation, you have to make your program work with multiple users. And once you start considering distributed processing and multi-users, then you have to consider security. So these are the issues that you have to look at. Now, the basis of this framework for programs is that it's command based. So you type a command and this causes the program to do something. Now, this may seem a little old fashioned because this is the way computers worked in the 1950s and the 1960s, that you would perhaps be on a teletype machine and you would type something, the computer would respond, and then you would type something else and the computer would respond. And that's the basic system that this framework is based on. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have a GUI user interface. But what happens is you create the GUI user interface, and then pressing on a menu item or a button or a dialog box will cause a command to be sent to the framework. And in this way, it's a good design because you want to always separate the functionality of your program from the user interface. If you don't do that, it's usually not going to be a good design. So let's take a look at the simplest commands. And here we're going to look at a built-in command that has no parameters. And you can type beep, or since it has no parameters, you could specify that it's beep, open parentheses, close parentheses, to signify that there's no parameters. Or you can say beep, open parentheses, close parentheses, semicolon. Now, the semicolon on the command line is optional, but it might be useful if you end up creating a batch file and later you want to implement that batch file as C# code. It'll make it a little bit easier if you've added the semicolons. In any case, all of these commands will work the same. And I want to illustrate this. I'm going to bring up Visual Studio and start now this is one of the applications that I've built under this framework. Oh, this is the wrong one. So let me get, this is a poker simulation program that creates odds tables for playing Texas Hold'em. But I want to do a different one, so I'll just go File, Open, Project, and I will do the WinForm Syscom program. So I'll go ahead and start this project. Okay, so I'm not going to get into the code right now. I'll do that later. But for now, I'll just run it. And when this program runs, you see a bunch of different windows that come up. But the important one over here is the command screen. Let me move it up so it doesn't interfere with the taskbar. And in the command screen, you can type commands. And let me just show, if I type beep, and hopefully you heard the little system beep that came up there. And I can also type beep, open close parentheses, and it works the same. And I can also type beep, open close parentheses with a semicolon, and all of those commands work the same. Let me go back to my presentation. So let's see, I want to go back. So that was the simplest commands. Now you can also have commands with parameters. And here's an example of some commands with parameters. So you can create a window with, and this is a text window. That's what twin stands for. So twin create, and the name of the window, and also a flag here. This flag indicates whether or not you want to not display the window. And that's currently working. I have 3 versions. I've ported this to 3 different interfaces. I have a WinForms interface, and that's the one we're looking at now. I also have a WPF interface, and that's the only one where this flag works. So you really have to, oh, okay, so I can't copy this, but I will go ahead and let me take this out of full screen, or let me bring up the taskbar, and I will bring up this thing. Okay, and now, so to demonstrate this, I can type twin create, and then it takes 2 parameters. The first parameter is the name, so I'll just call this my win, and I will also say false, saying, and I probably should reverse this flag, but false means that it will not, it's a no-show flag. So if you say true, then the window will not be shown. Okay, so I've executed that command, and now you can see that I have this window here called my win, And let me go back to the command line, or the command screen. And now I'm going to say, so you have control over the different functionalities. So I'm going to say set font, open parentheses, and the first argument for set font is simply the name of the window, which in this case it's MyWin. And then the second parameter is 22.5, and that's probably too big a font, but it should be okay. Okay, so something seems to have gone wrong there. I'm not sure that it worked. I can go over here to the message window, and it's telling me that I had a system exception, something invalid. So the command twin set font, oh, it was supposed to be twin set font size, and I typed twin set font. When this thing gets an exception, it doesn't interfere. I mean, it'll put a message up here in the message box, but it won't crash the program. The program continues to run, usually. Okay, so if I press the up arrow key, I get a version of the command, and we'll look at that square bracket O colon in a minute. But it was supposed to be set font size, and of course the arguments are still MyWin and 22.5. I probably should set a smaller font, but let's go ahead and do that. So there we go. We've set a font, so that's good. And let's go back over here. Back to the user interface and commands with parameters. Okay, and so now there's twin right line, MyWin, hello, my name is Tom. Now this string doesn't really need to be in quotes. Well, it does need to be in quotes because it includes a comma. And we're using commas as the delimiters between the parameters. And so if I didn't have a comma in this string, I wouldn't need to use the quotes. But let me go ahead now and try that command out. So back over here to the window that's going to be displayed, and also to the command box. And so now I'm going to say twin right line, open parentheses, MyWin, comma, and now I just quote, hello, comma, my name is Tom. And I don't know if I put a period there and a quote and a close parentheses, and I could put a semicolon here, it's optional. And okay, and we can see that by executing that command we have put that text into the window. And then finally the last command is twin, well, not the last command, but the last command that it demonstrate on this screen. And there's a typo there. That should probably be a capital W. I'm going to assume it's a capital W. save to file, and then open parentheses, mywin, comma, my text file dot txt, close parentheses, and okay, so that didn't work either. So let's go look at the error messages. Okay, so maybe I've got a little typo in the program, and maybe it is a lowercase w, because it's saying that the command is unrecognized. And so let's try this again, but with a lowercase w, and I'm going to get rid of that stuff, and I will explain that in just a minute. And I'm not sure, and if this, I got to go fix it and put in a capital W, so just to keep the commands consistent, comma, and here I'll just type hello dot text and see if that works. Okay, and that didn't work either. So let's see what the error message is. Let's scroll up a little. So twin, exception has been thrown by the target, could not find a part of the path. Okay, so there is a, let me scroll over on this. There is a system parameter that shows the path, and winform syscom 23 data hello.txt, and it couldn't find part of that path, and that's fine, but essentially the point is that you have a command, and I have to correct the spelling or the capitalization on the command, and it saves everything to a file, and I also have to correct where the system's data files are kept. Or maybe I have to redo this video, but it's not really important. What I'm trying to illustrate here is that you can have commands with parameters, and I will go fix this later, and the capitalization of it as well. Now, you can have commands that run on multiple threads, and so this is a little, let's see, how do I go back? This is a little bit of a busy screen here, but it's actually very simple. So if you notice here that the system has sort of built-in multi-threading, and the syntax for running a command on a different thread is to simply put the name of the thread followed by a colon in front of the command. So in this case, the name of the thread is 1, but it could be anything. You could call it my favorite thread, or another thread, or whatever you want to do. It's easier to just use digits, and that's usually what I do, but there's nothing to prevent you when you're using this framework for naming a thread anything you want. Now, I should explain that I'm calling these things tops. Well, here I'm calling them threads, but usually I call them tops. And it's a little different from just having another thread, because each top, or each thread in this case, has its own command queue. and it has its own transducer, and it has its own copy of the user-written code and data so that it runs independently of other threads, and this should minimize conflicts. And note, we have not been specifying a thread, and so if a command has no specified thread, it runs on the default thread, which is usually 0. Let's go back here and take a look at how we would put a command on another thread. So again, I'll bring up my window, and I'll also bring up the command screen. And one thing you can do is you can see that it's sort of saved a history of all the commands we've used. And if we use the up arrow, we can go to one of the previous commands. So here's a previous command. And you can see that in this case, it's indicating that it was run on the default thread, the 0. And so I will just change this to a 1. And by the way, the square brackets are superfluous. We're going to talk a little bit about what square brackets do. They kind of work like the quotes, because but they have an advantage over just using quotes, that you can have multiple nested square brackets. So you can have quotes within quotes, and we're going to see why that's important. And now I'm just going to make this hello. So it's just going to type hello, and you can see that it doesn't need the quotes, but it's running on a different thread. So let me go ahead and run this, execute this command, and you can see that it put the hello up there, but it did it from a different thread or a different top. And so and this is going to be important for making more efficient programs that utilize multiple cores within the CPU. And I'll illustrate this later, but I want to go on now and show like an advanced command. And this is some of the advanced syntax. It's not really that advanced, but it allows you to use a command within a command. And one of the examples of a command that would have a command within it is the assign key command. Now, it would get syntactically strange because there's all kinds of stuff, including a semicolon and commas and open and close parentheses within this command. But for the purpose of the assign key command, this whole thing will be treated as a single parameter. And in order to do that, we just put it in square brackets. We could, in this case, have just used quotes, but the square brackets can be more efficient because it's possible that there might be more nested commands within a command. And so we're going to do this thing right here. Now, let's take a look at what this does. It assigns a key. So in this case, it's the F1 key, or the function, the function 1 key, and it assigns it to this command. So then each time the F1 key is pressed, this command will be executed. And so let's go ahead. Oh, and by the way, the tone command, in this case, tone 600, 1000, will create a sound with a frequency of 600, and it'll last for 1 second or 1,000 milliseconds. Okay, so let's go see how this works. So again, I'll bring up, okay, hang on, hit the wrong key there. So I'll bring up the command, not over here. I'll bring up the command window, and I will go ahead and type assign key, open parentheses, F1, comma, square brackets, tone, open parentheses, 600, comma, 1000. And again, the semicolon here is optional, but I'll go ahead and put it in. And square brackets means that that's only, the whole thing in square brackets is one parameter to the assign key command. And I'll put close parentheses to end the assign key command, and a semicolon to, which is optional. I could leave that off, it doesn't really matter. Okay, now I've executed that, and so now function key 1 is assigned to the tone command. So I'm going to press function key 1. Oh, I had previously assigned function key 1 to something else, which actually is kind of interesting, because what it's doing is it's starting up a bunch of servers, each of which is doing some graphics. And there's going to be 100 of these servers. And so I'll redo that in a second, and I'll put it on a function key that I'm not using. But for now, we'll just watch these different servers being run. Now what's happening? Well, what's happening is the main program here has the function key 1 was assigned to start servers for gen n, and so it's doing some evolutionary art where the parameters for the evolutionary art are used in a genetic algorithm to try and create interesting art. Okay, so that was not exactly what I wanted to demonstrate. I'll demonstrate that later, but kind of interesting. So let me go redo the assign key thing, and I will change it from F1 to F9. I don't think that's currently being used by the program, so this should be good. Okay, I don't know what that tone was about. That usually means there's something wrong. So there was an exception in command setup command. Has the wrong number of parameters. Oh, I got to fix it so that it replaces the square brackets in the command history. And that shouldn't be too hard, but what happened is it didn't include the square brackets, and so it had a problem with the wrong number of parameters. So it treated this as 3 parameters, F9, the tone, open parentheses 600 was the second parameter, and 1000, and the message we got back from the system was that it had the wrong number of parameters. Okay, but once again, it's important to note that it didn't crash the system. The system's still going to work. And now I'm going to go back and put in the correct syntax. And I'll leave out all the semicolons because they're not needed. And I'll run this now. Okay, so now it ran, and we can see that no additional messages came up in the message text. And so now if I press the F9 key, I'm going to press it now. And that's not working. I don't know quite why. Let me do this to F8. I'm not sure. Maybe a bug that I need to fix. Let me put all the semicolons in. I don't think that should make any difference, but sign key F8 tone. Let me try something here. I'm going to say CF8, and what that does is it modifies the function key with the control key, so it's going to be on control F8. I'm pretty sure that's not assigned. So let's see how that works. Okay, and so now I'm going to do control F8. Okay. Well, I got to fix that. So it is a work in progress. I'm not sure why that hasn't worked. Or it may be just that the recording is not showing the tones. Let me just try something here. Let's see if the tone command works. Tone 600, 1000. Okay, so the tone command works, and I got to go figure out why the assign key didn't work. Okay, but it is a work in progress. So and that essentially explains how commands are executed, and in some case I've got a little bit of work to do to fix it. I'll probably have to redo the video, although it's, you know, it is what it is. I'm not claiming that the system is perfect. Let's jump back here. The back doesn't take it to the next level up. Okay, so here we are. So I've already explained the user interface, and notice that typing commands is a little bit old-fashioned, but you can also assign function keys. It did work with F1, and I'll talk a little bit about distributed processing here. So there's two main commands that allow distributive processing, and those two commands are start new server with the name of the executable that is going to be the server, and also the name of the pipe that's going to be used to pass commands to the server. And then there's another command called pipecmd, followed by the machine where the server is running, and the name of the pipe where that will be used to communicate with the server. Now, it could be on the same machine, or it could be on another machine on the network, or let's see. Hello. Control shift unpause. Okay. So now, as I was saying, there's two commands that allow allow the system to run other programs that serve as servers, and then they're sent commands with a pipe command. So when you want to start a new server, you use the start new server command and the name of the executable and the name of the pipe that the master program will use to send commands to the server. And then you have the pipe command okay, well, you have the pipe command that has a couple arguments, and one of the arguments is the name of the machine that the command is running on, and it could be the same machine, or it could be another machine on the network, or it's I haven't actually experimented yet, but it seems like you could use Azure machines on Microsoft Azure machines that would give you the flexibility of bringing up more machines as needed. And then, of course, the next parameter is the name of the pipe. And then the third parameter is the command that's going to be sent. And in this case, there's a typo here. This draw the picture 1080-1920 would have to be in square brackets or quotes, because otherwise the command will get confused when it hits this comma and when it hits this close parens. And then the last parameter is true or false, and this is just whether or not a reply is required from the server after executing this command. So this is a way of passing data back from the server. And let's take a look at this, because it is kind of interesting, and the program that I'm putting all this, that I'm demoing right now, actually has the capabilities of starting a bunch of servers, and that's what the F1 key was originally assigned to. And so when I press F1, it's actually going to start 100 threads, and each thread is going to start another server. Now, because these are all running on the same machine, you have a way of limiting the number of servers that can be started at any time. It uses a semaphore to limit the number of servers. But I'll go ahead and show you this one more time. So I press the F1 key and saying start servers for Gen N. Oh, I have to do something else. I gotta do, I believe it's an F4 key. So just to go back one gen, because this is an evolutionary arch system, and the previous gen had not been scored for fitness, so I have to go back one generation. And now when I do the F1 key, still saying that the previous gen, just the fitness file for it doesn't exist. Let me do F4, go back one gen. Let me take a look here at the so this screen is supposed to keep track of the progress, and the error message was that, okay, so I'll illustrate a different function so I can evaluate this generation before I run, before I start up the 100 servers. So Let me do F2, which should evaluate. Okay, so, and this take a little bit of time because each artwork has to be scored, and I score them by just pressing a single key. This, by the way, illustrates an alternative type of window. We saw the generation of a T-win. This is a G-win, which is a graphics window, and it's so now I have to score these, and I'll try and go pretty fast because there's 100 of them. So I'm going to I kind of like that one. That one's very pretty. That one's okay. I'm going to reject this one and reject this one, and I'll accept this one, and I'll accept this one, and I'll accept this one. I kind of like that one, and kind of like that one, and in fact, I'm just going to go through them really quick and just accept them all so that we can just see how the next generation with the servers is done. So I'm holding down the key that accepts them, and when I get to when I get to 99 out of 100, we hear a little beep, so the generation has been fully evaluated, and you can see we're back to the original screen, so I will go ahead and close this, and now it's ready to make the next generation. So I can press F1, and we can see these are all windows from what's going to eventually be 100 different servers, all accepting commands and creating the next generation of graphics. Now these graphics are not a big deal. They're just done with recursive circles. And again, I'm showing you the framework, not so much the evolutionary art program, which was built on the framework. But just to clarify, the evolutionary artwork is the start of a framework for doing evolutionary art and distributing usually it's the generation of images that takes up a lot of time in evolutionary art, and so it's going to be done in separate processors, possibly on different machines, and eventually perhaps over on Azure. But we can see that and it's done. So this one's not particularly slow. In any case, I'm going to quickly explain how you could add a new command. So a user written command, because right now, well, we can take a look. If I do a help command with the argument sys, it'll show me all the system commands that are available, and of course it uses its own system. And by the way, on these text windows, I have the option of increasing the font size with these two buttons up here in the menu bar. So here are some of the commands, and they're all listed here in alphabetical order. There's the assign key command, followed by the key name and the assign command. I got to figure out why that didn't work, but there's beep, there's bitmap set assign to gwin. There's something called a bitmap set, and it can be assigned to a graphics window, and that's actually what I'm doing when I'm evaluating all those images. bunch of bitmap set commands, bring win to top, clear editor. So this thing allows you to open an editor because, in fact, the batch files, you can create batch files that have sets of commands in them. Here's a bunch of gwin commands. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bigger just so that for the purpose, there's a whole bunch of gwin commands. There's list view win commands, and these are kind of like little spreadsheets, like ways of displaying records. There's the quit program command that will shut down the entire program. And here we see start new server. We talked about that. And also further down, there's the for some reason here's the pipe command. Pipe command, server machine name, pipe name, the string that you're sending over the pipe, and the Boolean value, wait for a reply. And by the way, these help commands are generated automatically using reflection, because these are all functions in the program, and I want to just show you how to make a user written command. In the user written command, you go to this file called app code, and this is where the application code is. And there's a bunch of stuff that's already in here for doing my evolutionary art stuff, but I can add a new command. Like the command could be let's take a look at the help for this. So if I go over here and instead of saying help sys, I say help app, we will see all the application commands for my evolutionary art program. So there's add evo directory, display copyright, evaluate the generation, go back one generation, load the fitness, start servers for Gen 0. This is the first generation of the evolutionary art, and start servers for Gen N. So this will start the servers for the next generation. And by the way, you can do a help all, and this will do a whole bunch of things. First of all, it lists all the help options. So you got help, help all, help com, help sys, help app, help keys, help command synonyms. Oh, I should explain that if you don't like a command, you can create a synonym for the command. So if instead of saying twin write line, you could just change it to twrite, or just to write. So if you find the commands to be awkward, and now here, aside from the help options, it's listing all the system commands. It's also listing all the application user written commands, and it's showing what keys are mapped to what. Now it's showing Control 8 as being assigned to tone. It's also weirdly got function 1 assigned to tone, but function 1 is also assigned to start servers for gen n. Anyway, little details. I should probably not allow multiple commands to be assigned to the same functions. Need to look at that. Also, I think part of the problem is when I added these, the bug is that it's supposed to put a 0, 1, put a 0 in front of the single digit function keys. Interesting. Wonder if I assign the tone command to function 11, that should work. Let me just go back here. So assign key, and I'm going to change this from F9 to F11, and I got to put the square brackets in here. And oh, those curly brackets, that will not work. And okay, so let me execute this. Now let's see what the F11 key does. Okay, so that's what's happening. What happened is when I assign the function keys, I have to, instead of saying 1, I have to say 0, 1. And it's a good thing I didn't do that, because that would have messed up the start servers command hooked up to the other function keys. Note that the function keys can be modified by Alt, Shift, or Control. So it means that you can have a total of 48 different function keys assigned. The only problem is some of the Alt function keys do things with my NVIDIA card, so I try to avoid using the Alt function keys. In any case, aside from the key mapping, which is kind of interesting because that helped me debug that other problem, aside from the key mapping, you also, it lists the synonyms for commands. Right now there are no synonyms. I keep trying to think cinnamon, so synonyms for commands. And then it also lists all the batch files. Now, a batch file is one way you can use to create new user commands. And this shows all the batch files that are currently available in this system. And we'll get back to that. For now, I'm going to show you how to add another command. There is a class called appcode. So this is a class called appcode, and this is where the application that's written under this system is to be placed. And you can have more classes within this class or used by this class, but I'm just going to give one example, and it's going to be public void add two ints. This is not a so I've got int I1 comma int I2, and it's going to take two integers and just display the sum in the window, and I'll just have it display in my window. So I'm just going to say twin okay. When you use functions in C code, all of the functions that we've used before are available. You just have to put a G in front of them. So G twin, where's twin? Let's see, twin right line, okay, and then it takes two strings. The first one is the name of the window, so now I do have to put it in quotes here because this is C#, so my win, comma, and then I'll just say I1 plus I2 dot toString. Okay, so this adds a new command. So when you want to add a new command to the system, you just write the function here, and that takes care of it. So I'm gonna shut the system down. So, and I can do that just by closing the command window. And now I'm going to recompile it. Okay, now it's running. Now, let's take a look here. We can say help app. So this is the application commands. And we can say there's a command, add two ints, int32 I1 and int32 I2. Now, I do have to create the window, twin create, and I think I hard-coded it to mywin. Oh, I need another parameter to that, so I need to say false. Okay, so that creates the mywin. So now I can go back over here to the command, and I can execute the new command that I just created. So add two ints and open parentheses, and I can just say what? I can say 65 comma 35. So that will add those two integers, and we can see here in this window that the answer is 100. I don't know how well that shows up in the video, so I will just increase the font size using those menu bar buttons. But we can see that it creates it 100. Let's do the same command again. This time we'll just do 2 plus 2. Don't want to overwork the computer. And we can see that the answer was 4. So that shows one way. There's actually numerous ways for the user to create new commands. So, and one of them, by creating batch files, you don't even have to restart the program. So I can go back over here and I can say file, new file, and I can just create a text file and open it. And here I can just say add two ints. And here I'll just say 6 comma 6, which of course is going to be 12. And So I'll do 6 plus 5, which of course is going to be 11, and 6 plus 4 is going to be 10. So I can put as many commands as I want in here, and then I can save it. So File, Save As, and it's going to go in a directory called batch. And this is where all the batch files go, and I'll just call this I'll just call it batch.txt and go ahead and save it. So now that batch file is saved, and this is something interesting, because when you're running the program, you can add new commands without having to restart the program. So you can create commands on the fly by using the batch files. So here I'm just going to say batch, and we can see that those commands, the add two ints commands 12, 11, and 10, were all executed, and the results 12, 11, and 10 were displayed in the My window. So that's two ways that you can create, that a user can create new commands. One, you can write C# code and put it in the app code directory, and that's where we saw the add two ints command being added. And then you can also create batch files, and those batch files can call other commands, and there is a way of passing parameters to the batch files. So if I wanted to make this a parameter, I would just say %1. This would be a parameter, and I can reuse the same parameter again, %1, and I can reuse the same parameter again. And you can have as many parameters as you want. Just keep putting more parameters. You have %2, %3, and so forth. So I will save this as a batch file. And now when I call batch, I'm required to give a parameter to it. So I will say batch open parentheses 100. So I will pass 100 in to the batch file. And let's bring up that window, the My window. Yeah, here we go, My win. And now we'll execute batch 100. So it's going to say 106, 105, and 104. And here we can see that the batch file was executed with the argument of 100. And so it was 100 plus 6, 100 plus 5, and 100 plus 4 were all executed. So this is an easy way for end users. Say the system was managing a bank, and then there's a whole bunch of commands, and so the bank manager comes in every morning and he has a whole bunch of commands that he has to execute in order to start the day and to do up any backups or whatever needs to be done at the beginning of the day for the bank. And after he figures out exactly what he wants to do each day, he can make a batch file, and then he can do them all with one command, or he can even create a function key that would execute that batch file. And so by pressing one button on the system, he can execute all the commands that he needs to initialize the bank software at the beginning of each day. There may be another batch file for the close of the day, and it's easy. The programmers will build the low-level commands, and then the users have the option of putting those low-level commands together into a batch file. Now, it also, I don't have it currently working in this version, but I have another version where batch files can be created using the language Lua. And that makes the batch files very sophisticated, so you can have if statements and for loops and all kinds of things in the batch files. So anyway, I think that's a quick overview of my system, and I will just close this out and to bring a little smile to your face, or to my face anyway, I am going to press F1 key, and we will watch the servers create new artwork. I know generative art right now is a big thing, but I've been doing it for decades. But it's a little different. I don't just go on a website, and say, make me a picture of a fish, or make me a picture of a fish singing Bing Crosby songs or something like that, which I know you can do. This is your classic generative art. So there's just a little bit of separation between the artist and the art. That the artist sets up a process, and in my case, it's some computer software. And if you go to my Facebook, see Dr. Tom, you can see a bunch of my generative art. This is very simplistic compared to most of my stuff. Anyway, that ran the servers. I'm gonna do another video to show how you can use ChatGPT to create new functions for this system. And so this system takes care of the interface and the threading and all of that stuff, but you can use ChatGPT to add functionality, and we'll do something simple like we'll get ChatGPT to write a function that'll solve quadratic equations, and then we'll add it to the system so it'll create a new command for solving quadratic equations. And I don't know what that has to do with my art, my evolutionary art stuff, but I'll be taking all this stuff out. Anyway, guys, have a great day. Thank you very much for watching this to the end. I know my demo was a little rough, but I sure do appreciate your watching this. Thank you, and have a great day.